and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wanderbarn podcast network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mastering the Business of Yoga. I am so excited that you are joining me for today's episode of the show. And today on the podcast, I'm really excited to be joined by Maria Waag. And Maria is a yoga, meditation, and mindfulness teacher with more than 19 years of experience with yoga and 11 years of mindfulness. And she really decided to change her career path and become a teacher after almost losing her life. And now she runs her own yoga and mindfulness business and loves to bring yoga out of the studios to where people are, and has been teaching in a variety of settings, such as for FENDI in Rome, Wanderlust 108 in Milan, and the Buddhist Temple in Oslo. With a very thorough education and many specializations, Maria is focusing on helping one-on-one clients learn to use yoga and mindfulness to help with specific needs such as pain, trauma, concussions, and much more. And she uses her deep understanding of anatomy and biomechanics to help her students with injuries, challenges, and so much more. And in this episode of the podcast, Maria shares how she got into yoga, what inspired her to start teaching, as well as how she started specializing in working with students one-on-one. And she shares her top 10 tips for specializing in yoga for anyone who's looking to dive deeper in their business other than just teaching in studios. This episode is seriously jam-packed with goodness and so many bits of wisdom. So I hope that you guys really enjoy this. And without further ado, here is Maria. Welcome to the podcast today, Maria. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. And tell us where you're joining us from today.
I'm joining you from Pavia, Italy. So it's a little bit outside of Milan. So I'm Norwegian, but I moved here to Italy for love. Cliche, but that's how it is. And yeah, it's so nice to be here.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I feel like Italy sounds like a very quaint, beautiful place to live a life and be a mom and run a business. So I love that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a beautiful place to be living, feeling very lucky to live here.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that. And I'm so excited to dive in with you. We were talking beforehand. We've been trying to plan this for over a year now. And just between motherhood and babies and all the things going on, it's been challenging. And so I'm just really thrilled to dive in. But before we kind of get into talking about, specialized classes and specialized one-on-ones and privates and all that good stuff, I'd love to hear a little bit about your yoga story. Can you tell us a bit about how you got into yoga and then what inspired you to become a teacher?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Amanda. Oh, yeah, definitely. I started yoga 19 years ago. I feel so old saying that, but yeah, it's a long time ago. And I first started out because I was dancing. I went to the National Ballet School and I needed some way to recover and work on my flexibility, even if I'm hypermobile. So I don't know if I actually needed that, but that's another story. But I started out like that, and yoga kind of just followed me throughout the university years. I got injured when I was on my dancing career path, so I had to pivot and change, and I studied biology. I wanted to save the world and the planet and humans instead. Yoga was my constant, but at the same time, I've have this tendency of being very high achiever. So I was also really just achieving on the yoga mat and getting really into the physical postures and seeking out hard practices like power yoga. And I was also, having my scientific background, being a little bit allergic and judgmental, I must say, I admit, towards all the kind of spiritual stuff. I thought it was just wishy-washy and not for me. So it wasn't until I got severely ill in 2013 that I really started to discover the deeper benefits of yoga. And I discovered also mindfulness, and that completely also changed my practice and the way of really just seeing and living my life. I got a brain inflammation that was autoimmune. I had been pushing myself a lot with a high career and working hard in everything that I've been doing. So I think that if that didn't happen at that point, I would for sure have had a burnout or something else at some point. So I was this typical like good girl perfectionist working hard in this performance society. And I was meeting my biggest challenge yet, not just because I was battling surviving and chemotherapy and all of that, but also because just laying there in the hospital bed and not being able to achieve or be there for someone else like I was used to was just so hard. I realized that I had to kind of learn to find a value and value myself for just being me and just being independent of what I achieved and accomplished. And yoga was just fundamental in this transformation for myself, learning to kind of love myself for who I am and just finding that detachment in what I was doing and finding who I am in a way, and just also finding value in the small things in life. And that long recovery that I had also just taught me so much. So it's a huge learning experience. And I also got to learn how adaptable yoga is, because in the recovery phase, it was really difficult for me, the things that I could do and not do. So it was really humbling coming from that really strong practice, advanced postures, to just having to rest after cat and cow. So I think this really also transformed my relationship and love or respect for yoga. And so after this journey, I just had to become a yoga teacher and pass this on to others. So it's just this transformational story for me, as I guess many other yoga teachers as well. That became my huge passion. And now, I am a yoga and mindfulness teacher, trying to bring forward how potent and powerful these tools are in navigating any challenge in life, really. So I've been using it to navigate both big and small challenges also ever since. Like if you have an argument with your boyfriend or whatever it can be, you can navigate any challenge in life in a much more connected and meaningful way. And I try to transmit that in my teaching, in addition to of course, fun and different kinds of elements. But I'm trying to become that teacher that I was missing, the teacher that I wish I had when I was sick, that was able to adapt and that was able to see me and also able to also transmit maybe the deeper layers of yoga without, using advanced lingo or talking too much about chakras and stuff that would have scared me away many years ago. And there's so many layers and depths to this ancient and beautiful practice that is so beneficial for the modern person that I'm trying to then communicate in a more eatable and accessible way. So I have a background also as a public speaker and a media spokesperson. So I'm trying to use that to try to make it accessible, because I really believe that that's possible. So that's kind of my passion. Well,
hey, yoga teachers, I'm just hopping in here to let you know about a great new software option for any boutique studios out there. Offering Tree has added a Studio Lite package to their pricing. This package is for all of the smaller studios out there who need an affordable software package. It comes with all the features of Offering Tree, including a website builder, class and appointment scheduling, payment processing, on-demand content, and live stream capabilities, marketing tools, and so much more. It includes payroll reporting, automations for your intro offers, sending text reminders for classes, advanced reporting to keep an eye on your numbers, and access for up to 3 staff members. All at a very low price, including a discount if you use my partner link. Head on over to offeringtree.com/mbiome to learn more and register for a free trial. Once again, that's offeringtree.com/mbiome to get a little discount and start your free trial. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a beautiful story. And I'm happy to hear that you were able to, heal from the illness that you had, and then also to use yoga throughout that. I feel like I've heard that many times through the podcast, and it's just really beautiful to know that this practice that we love so much can really, really help us mentally, physically, emotionally. And so I'm curious for you, in what year did you end up doing your teacher training?
So I did that in 2017. I got sick in 2013, and in those years in between, I was using most of my time to recover and diving I can think full time into yoga and mindfulness. I was just obsessed with it because I was seeing how extremely powerful and helpful it was for me. So I'd become a really yoga nerd at that point. So when I took my teacher training, it was like, okay, about time. But I had so much respect for teachers and for yoga just in general. So I took my teacher training 200 hour in 2017 and I started teaching straight away. But in the beginning, I was like, oh, but I cannot even charge for my classes because, I'm such a newbie teacher. And I had, putting all of these yoga teachers up on this pedestal. And I think it was just also thanks to you, Amanda, and all of your podcasts. I was like, okay, I'm a yoga business owner. I have to actually charge for my services, and all of that transition and that mindset was just really helpful for me. So thank you, Amanda, for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. I feel like it's just like such a typical mindset that so many of us have when we start. It's like we pay thousands and thousands of dollars and spend, hundreds of hours getting trained. And then we come out and we just feel like I can't charge anyone for this. And it is such an interesting mindset. And I get it because I experienced this as well as a new yoga teacher. But yeah, I'm so glad. That's very much where the podcast came from. So I'm so glad that that was able to be a resource for you as well. And so give us a high level overview of your career. You start teaching in 2017 and now it's 2024. What have you kind of been up to over the last, I guess, 7 years of teaching?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. Thank you, Amanda. It's been a lot of exciting things. So I started out with privates and group classes, and I very quickly started to charge. So, it was just in the early area. And I was starting to teach in studios. And in the beginning, I think I was a typical but hustling yoga teacher, just saying yes to a lot of opportunities. But I was also really interested in teaching outside of studios. So in my early years as a teacher, I was teaching in, for example, everything from the Buddhist Temple of Oslo to in Rome, for example, there was this place called the Sanctuary Eco Retreat, which was this beautiful oasis in the Rome that was transformed into a nightclub in the night. It's a really cool and hip place. To Wanderlust. I don't know if you heard about it, the festival concept Wanderlust. So I'm working with Italy branch of Wanderlust. So one of the biggest yoga festival concepts in the world is American concept. So I'm working with the Italian branch, and I've been teaching with them for many years since 2019. And also working with corporates and parallelly also teaching one-on-ones all the time. So it's just gradually been both expanding and focusing as well at the same time on my one-on-ones. And like many of your podcasts too have been talking about, this niching in and and all of that. And I love that you're also coming forward with that. There is another possibility. There's a possibility to do parallel things and to do many of your passions at the same time. So I have been niching in a way that I've been really specializing in the way that I'm teaching one-on-ones. But at the same time, I really enjoy also teaching group classes. I have an online on-demand platform with yoga classes and online courses and different things, mindfulness. I'm also a Yoga Alliance continued education provider. So I'm working with teachers with continued education courses, and I have some that are also pre-registered that you can come and learn more with me because I'm very, I love anatomy and I love to communicate that in a eatable way as well. So and that's, I think, my biology background that I really enjoy, the research and to neuroscience and the endocrine system, the hormones and all of these things. And this is very complex. Like sitting down and reading research is super heavy. So yeah, I'm really excited about sharing it in like a cool way, right? Because I think it's something useful for teachers, especially. So I'm trying to do that. And so I'm doing several things parallelly. I keep teaching at these festivals. I'm also hosting some retreats. There is a retreat coming up as well in Italy. So if someone wants to join a nice retreat in this beautiful south of Italy, there's another opportunity for that. And I'm also I'm teaching pre and postnatal. So I specialized in that as well. I did that way before I got pregnant myself because first of all, I did it a little bit also as a strategy because I thought that that's where a lot of clients are. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit different that would give me a job in different studios. And it was working really well. But I ended up just really falling in love with teaching it because it's such a powerful journey and transition. And I love using yoga in transitions and supporting people through big changes. So I really love teaching that. And yeah, with in terms of corporates, for example, I've been working with FENDI in Rome, so that's been really exciting. I've been working with them for several years. So also when I was living in Rome, but also online later when there was COVID time, and also big corporates like teaching mindfulness at Capgemini, for example, or different kinds of things. I'm working with a couple of firms, one in Italy and one in Norway, that is specializing into corporate well-being, so that I don't have to do all of the back end work, which makes it possible for me to do it, to work with big clients, because it's so much behind the scenes work in organizing these kinds of things. So I'm able to come in and do the teaching job and do minimal work behind the scenes, which allows me to do that. And if you are a yoga teacher listening and you want to work with corporates, I think that's another, great way of doing that, because you're able to, if you're doing a great job, work with really big clients. If you're a professional and you have good, recommendations afterwards, you can get really great clients your way without having to do all of the extra work. So if you want to really specialize in corporate, that's great. But I think then sometimes it's useful to then dive fully in. But if you want to branch out and do many other exciting things, I think it's a great way to combine, like I have, because I really enjoy also working with corporate yoga, because I meet people where they are, where they actually maybe need it the most, where the situation that I used to be in, right? I would have needed someone to come and really
same as me.
pull me from my desk and like, you need a break, Um, and I think that you can really make a difference in people's life that way too. So yeah, many different exciting things.
Yeah, you do so much. And you also, you have a 1-year-old. So I'm just curious, like, how do you kind of balance all of this? How do you decide like what to say yes to, what to say no to, all that type of stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I am really strict with my priorities. I say no to lots of things. And it's a really great question, but also I really had to actually be very strict with my priorities also before I got my child, because I'm still living with chronic headaches. So I'm still having, consequences of that brain inflammation many years ago. So I'm much better now, but I have limited screen time, for example. I cannot sit so much in front of a computer, and I have to be very strict with how I use my time. And it's just really taught me to be very efficient. But I also have a system. Like I'm really sitting down with myself and evaluating every month. And also like every year I do like a full day of just really diving into what are my priorities. Am I on the right track in the direction that I want to be going? But every month I'm just like checking in with myself, and sometimes even every week if there's a lot of things going on, and I'm just really evaluating and thinking that if I'm saying yes to this, I'm saying no to something else. And that can also be like, I'm saying no to spending time with my baby. So this last year, I've taken a lot of time off and being with my baby. And that's also thanks to some of the things that I've already established, like an on-demand platform that is already there that people can use without me, and having really loyal clients that will be waiting for me, waiting for me actually a year to come back. Like, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
And yeah, I'm teaching one-on-ones again now, but I was taking a long break from it. And I was prioritizing to do some corporate events and collaborations and teaching at Wanderlust, for example, teaching a day retreat and like single things. But balancing that with being full-time with a baby and just working when baby is sleeping is hard. So
that's why I wanted to ask, because I was like, I did that for a long time and it's so hard. It's like baby's down and you're just like, I just need to work so fast. And then they wake up early and you're like, no,
I know you were supposed to sleep another 20 minutes.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
There's so much respect for every mom out there. Like, I have a new level of respect for moms. I think it's just hat off. But it's also so beautiful and really snaps me every day, every moment, actually, just, back to reality. What's the actual priorities here? So when I'm planning, I'm really also incorporating life goals and not just my professional goals. Like, I want to be able to maintain my health, for example, which is like essential for me. I want to have enough time to rest. I want to be able to spend time with my baby and all of these things. So I have this, I've created this like this package that I also actually have as a on-demand course, because also many of my students, they come to me, and especially if they're going through big transitions or uncertainty, like let's say you're losing your job, or you're going through a move or a breakup, or I don't know, just feel lost in life or feel like you're not finding enough meaning. I've gone through so many transitions, like for example, when I could not become a dancer and had to pivot, and then I got sick and I had to just reinvent my life. And it has happened several times in my life, also additional to that. So I really learned how to just sit down and create new values. So instead of focusing on the things that you cannot do anymore or be dragged down by that, just allowing yourself to process and heal and move forward and discover all the possibilities that you can do. So I think that's really powerful. And it's quite a popular course I have online as well for that, called Mindful Reflections. I'm using a lot of mindfulness in this processing as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious, you were talking about your clients who waited for you for, a year, which is so amazing. So I'm curious how you find your clients. Like, how did you find your private clients? How do you find your corporate clients, the people who are interested in what you have to offer?
Yeah. Okay. So my word of mouth, definitely, hands down. Like that's definitely where I find the most clients. And other than that, it's also through, I think, because I have not niched down to only doing one-on-ones, and I'm also getting out there, meeting people, networking, and through my other offerings, I'm having other one-on-ones from that. So let's say someone is joining me at the Wanderlust festival, or they're joining me from in a retreat or something else, workshop in a studio, and they fall in love and they want to do more with me, learn more with me. But it also comes the other way around, actually. I have people that contact me for one-on-ones. Maybe they cannot afford it because my prices are maybe on the higher end, especially compared to others in Italy, because I have so much education, so much study, and so much experience. Then sometimes maybe it cannot be accessible for them, but then I can refer them to other resources. So it actually helps me with my overall income as well to have these different options that they can go to. Like, okay, then you can subscribe to my on-demand library of classes, right? So I think what has really helped me as well is the fact that I've specialized so much. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of time. Maybe that's your next question. Sorry. But yeah, because I've been really specializing in many different things that makes it not only possible for me to help people to a different level. I'm working now with people one-on-one in a very therapeutic way. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist or doctor. So I'm very careful using that word. But in the end, that's what I'm doing, in the sense that I'm looking at a main challenge that they have. Maybe they're coming to me with fertility issues, or maybe they're coming to me because they have a spine or hip injury or something very specific. And I'm doing a proper intake assessment of them, and I'm helping create a program building on all of my different educations. So I have specialized through a lot of teacher trainings with yoga medicine, for example. So a lot of really heavy, in-depth teacher trainings into yoga anatomy in terms of the hip, a model on the hip, a model on the spine. I have my biology background already in the background there, so I already know a lot about human anatomy, but this is like really specialized and really high quality in the nerve system and pain management, for example, and trauma, PTSD. I work with students with that. And since I have many different things like this, I have also people that would be within kind of that group, maybe chatting with each other in, like, let's say Facebook forums. Like, okay, I have this kind of headache. I've never come across anyone that have been able to help me, but Maria is amazing. Like, you have to go to her. And that is very powerful, because then I get clients from all over the world, because they're so happy. So they're just going out there by themselves and just talking about it. And it's just within this kind of communities, people have a lot of trust in what they hear, because of course these reviews of people are heartfelt. They say it because they actually want to help other people in the same situation as them. So it's not only just really meaningful for me to see this amazing transition that you're able to give when you're working with people one-on-one like that, but it also has that huge benefit that um, you have such a niche and combination of things that people will come to you. I have clients from the US, from France, from Germany, from all around Europe, really, and also Asia, finding me. And sometimes I don't even know all like how they found me, but also I think through my website. And like recently, a big American firm found me through my website. So that's another thing that thanks you, Amanda, because you convinced me to make a website that one time. Like I thought, oh no, that's not necessary, but yes, it is. So the SEOs of my website has brought me some important clients as well. So I think it's a combination of things but definitely word of mouth is very powerful. You're doing a great job, which is really taking care of your clients in a very professional and caring way. They will recruit for you. So at this point, I don't even market my own one-on-ones. Like my other platforms like Instagram and stuff is mainly talking about my other kinds of offerings because the one-on-ones are just doing themselves.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And I love this conversation because so much of the time I feel like my conversations are around niching, which I do love like the concept of niching, but I think sometimes it can be really hard to just choose like one avenue or like one direction to go in. And what I'm kind of hearing from you in your journey is that it's not that you haven't done niching work, it's just been more like specialization and you have many specializations. So you're like very clear on what you offer people. But it's not just like one thing, like you don't only teach prenatal or only teach, therapeutic yoga. And so I'm curious for other people who kind of are like multi-passionate and like maybe want to specialize in a few things. Like, what are some of your tips for somebody who, like a yoga teacher like yourself, maybe like a couple of years ago?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. And I can totally relate to that. I think you can relate to it too, because I heard some episodes you were
Totally.
talking about it. Because, when you have so many passions, it's also just so great to be able to follow several of your passions when your work time is kind of your life. It's so big percentage of your life, right? So being able to follow several things is so great. And I just wanted to add, for example, that I honestly think that I'm a better teacher with these client groups also because I have a break a little bit and I get some distance. So for example, working with students and clients with PTSD, it's quite heavy. It's quite energy consuming for me. I love it because you can make a really huge impact in someone's life, really change their life. And it's just mind blowing to be able to serve in that way. But you have to be extremely careful in how you talk and really read all the body language, like all the time and really on. So I would never put, for example, two PTSD students in the same day. For example, I need to have a distance to recharge to be able to really do a great job. And it just feels great for me. Or also pain management can sometimes be really heavy as well. Or cancer, I'm also specialized in that. Or grief. So all of these things can be a little heavy to work with, or mental health challenges like anxiety, depression. All of these I have specializations in. And I'm then trying to divide them out a little bit and then give myself a break, like maybe teaching a fun group class or doing something else that refills me up a little bit. So I would say tips to answer your question, getting eager there, but to answer your question, tips for other teachers. I have made like 10 top tips for yoga teachers that I would like to share because there's so many more. And I'm actually also, that's something I forgot to tell in terms of my business angle now. I'm also teaching yoga teachers the business the business of yoga in a way. I'm working with one-on-one coaching with wellness entrepreneurs, mainly yoga teachers, but also wellness entrepreneurs that would like to have some coaching because I have, for example, also a lot of PR experience from my past. I have experience in like many different kinds of things that I can pass on, and I will be giving my clients like the intake assessment on how to work with one-on-ones, and I can, guide in different kinds of ways. But this is something that will be available for the Ambiome listeners. If you want to also download it, you can go ahead and do that. And it's 10 different tips. The first one is, of course, to choose a specialization or more. I would start maybe with one and then have more after some time when you feel ready to add on. And just if possible, do some trainings in them, study something extra that gives you that extra layer and depth and quality. And if you can't afford a teacher training, if you're a new teacher, if you can't afford additional teacher trainings, for example, some of my teacher trainings that I've taken are with yoga medicine. They're extremely high quality, but they're also very expensive. So, maybe that's not accessible. And that's also actually why I have made some of my continued education courses, because it's possible to dive into something without diving into like the extreme details and still be able to offer something that is different than what the other yoga teachers teaching one-on-ones are. So choosing something, it could be, and how to choose, that's also another story. I could talk so much about this, but I'm going to try to be short. So I would think about, what's your background? Like, what's your strength? In terms of, for me, for example, I was reflecting on, okay, what do I already know? I have my biology background. I'm a little bit of an anatomy geek. I love the nerve system. And I was looking at my own personal story. I do recommend that for people listening to. Have you gone through something challenging yourself? Having that additional benefit of that sensitivity, your students will really love that. Like, they really like that you have kind of gone through something similar, because you will see them in a different way. You will respect them, and you will be sensitive in a different way. You can read them and be supportive. So, for example, the fact that I live with headache, or being through a serious neurological illness, or other things. I've also had some childhood trauma, so I'm passionate about also because of that. I had some fertility issues also after my brain inflammation. So I was passionate about diving into that. So kind of everything that I started to dive into was because of my own personal needs, but it also ultimately became something that you're naturally more passionate about, maybe, but then you also have that added layer of having a personal experience. And then, of course, branching out to seeing all the other options within that. So I've studied all kinds of neurological illnesses to be able to help. That has nothing to do with mine, but at least, you have a starting point. So I would think about that, but I would also maybe think about, how can you serve someone uniquely in a one-on-one session compared to a group class? So let's say if you love sound healing, if you do a gong bath, you can also have a great experience in a group class. I'm not a specialist in sound healing, but just to say that maybe to specialize in something that you can provide individually that they would not be able to have in a group session would be strategically also better for you. So, for example, when I'm specialized in prenatal, but I'm also specialized in, in-depth things within that. So prenatal myofascial release, for example, or in postnatal C-section scar rehabilitation. I had a C-section myself. And then you are able to work in a way with people one-on-one that can give them another layer, or pelvic floor rehabilitation. So you're able to do assessments. I'm doing orthopedic tests with them and doing things that they will not be able to get in a group class. So it's a good reason for them to invest in that time one-on-one. And it's the only way they can get that kind of follow-up. So I would think a little bit about that. And also, it's always great to think about what kind of general problems will come up, like back problems, always occurring in the yoga world. Yeah. So like something to do with spine, or even hip or SI joint. I've specialized in that too. Like there's so much SI joint pain around, for example, or pre and postnatal. There will always be people pregnant, So that's also a great niche. And different kinds of things. And also, it's important to follow something that you'd like, of course, a passion, because you're going to work a lot with it. So something that you would like to also research on your own, that's like, okay, I enjoy, maybe following people on Instagram that is talking about this topic, or I'm enjoying, getting, maybe if you're really into research like me, you enjoy reading the research articles, but you can also just generally enjoy being in that sphere, or that knowledge sharing, let's say, because that will keep you kind of updated in your field. And that's also very appreciated from your students. So that's kind of like my number one. There is so much to say, but yeah, that's so choosing something to specialize and be strategic in how you choose it. And then, of course, if you're choosing something that in the end you feel like, oh, shit, when I'm teaching this our language, but when I'm teaching this, it doesn't feel it's for me. Let's say you're studying to teach PTSD and you realize, okay, this is way out of my scope. I don't want to teach this. You can still use this for group classes. You can have a different kind of sensitivity and read body language of someone, because in group classes, it can be that you will have someone that has experienced trauma, that will have some reactions that you can pick up on, and you can be a better teacher in general. So it's never a waste of time. So that's what I always say. Education is never a waste of time or studying something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just moving on to the next, I have a tendency to get really eager when I'm talking about things that I love. And I just really love the opportunity to share this, because your podcast has been so important for me, Amanda, throughout my career. So I'm just really happy to be able to share with other Ambion listeners. If I can help somehow, I just love that, because sometimes it can be a little lonely, right? To be an entrepreneur. And you're sitting a lot also in front of your computer with your taxes, your website, whatever, whatnot. And, having these additional points in this community that you've created, I think is so great. So hopefully it's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
So the second recommendation on my list here is to take your students really seriously and to just really make them feel seen and make sure that you're delivering quality sessions every single time. So really prepare well, listen to them. Like, the sessions is not about you. It's not about you showing off your knowledge. Your knowledge will always shine through in the way you ask questions, the way that you're able to maybe predict. Like, let's say one of my students right now that I'm following is having pelvic floor dysfunction. And in the first session, I just immediately saw that she's, having the wrong breathing. So everything is connected, and I could predict that, okay, so do you have some pain also there? And she was like, oh my God, how do you know? Like, this kind of things, your students will just see it straight away, right? So there is a different way of showing that. It's just important to not make it about you, but to always make it about them and listen. Just that's also a big part of the sessions, actually, just to be there and listen and guide them in a professional way and make them, feel seen and trusted. So I always make notes, for example, also about personal things. So if they share with me that my son has a birthday next week, I will always follow up on that as well. Like, you are a human in their lives, and you give that additional, empathy. It's not only, I really actually also care so much about my students. I love them, but it also has a huge benefit in terms of their learning, because if they trust you, if they feel seen, they will prioritize the exercises you give them to do at home, and they will also listen much more carefully when you are sharing things with them. And I think that is what's making a big impact in the results as well. So it really has an effect. And so I'm also, the way that I'm following them up is very thorough. So I give them the opportunity to write me in between sessions on WhatsApp, for example. I will check in on them if I don't hear from them. If they, let's say, have bought a package and they're supposed to contact me to reschedule a new class, I will check up on them after a week. I will not bother them with a lot of messages or emails, because I know everyone is busy. So I'm very, finding that fine balance, but I'm there and I'm present, and it's really appreciated. And I'm assessing them before and also after some time to show them their own progress, because it's sometimes not so easy to see. And I will explain to them why we're doing what we're doing, which will help often. It depends on what kind of client I'm working with, okay? Because sometimes that's not suitable. But in many situations, it can be really helpful, because it gives an incentive of actually doing the exercises at home. And then they will understand, like, oh, this is actually important, and how I'm doing it is important because of this and that. So it's more likely that they will remember how to breathe, for example, when they're doing an exercise, because they have understood why. And it's, for example, with pain, if you understand why pain is coming, it will actually sometimes also lower the pain, because brain is the mastermind of everything. So the fear or the not understanding can increase pain itself. So there's so much going on there. And my third thing, my main recommendation for yoga teacher is to find your voice and your strength and your uniqueness, and be really conscious about how you can be a better teacher. So keep trying to improve yourself, evaluate yourself. Like, okay, how did the session go? How can I improve? If you have a reaction or a feedback, like just be really open and flexible. But don't take it personal if someone, for example, is not signing up for your sessions after you use some time in the initial communication, because that can be so many reasons. Usually it's nothing about you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's just generally, when I was a newbie teacher, I took it so personally, but now I'm like, no, it's probably nothing to do with me. But just in some situations, it's just really necessary also to evaluate, okay, was it something in the communication or something like that? I think it's just to be humble enough to look at yourself and be willing to improve, because then you will also grow as well as a teacher and evolve. But to find your strength and your uniqueness, look at your background, like beyond yoga. I was, for example, looking at my own background as a biologist. Okay, I had that strength. I had my story, my health journey, but I also, for example, have been studying behavioral psychology at university. I've been studying. So this is nothing to do with my one-on-ones necessarily, but how I'm building my business and how people understand marketing, for example, and interviewing skills from my master's degree, for example, like being able to ask open questions and just really reflecting a lot on what do I actually know and how can I use that in a very conscious way to be a better teacher. And I think mindfulness is also a huge benefit here, to be able to be a conscious and mindful teacher, because being mindful of how we talk and how we see the other person, and being able to put different hats on for different people, for different sessions. And I have a completely different hat on now in the interview with you, where I'm kind of just Maria, eager in talking, to compared to when I'm teaching like a big corporate event, or if I'm teaching at a fun yoga festival, I'm doing it in a different way. Or if I'm teaching a one-on-one session with someone that is going through something really, really hard right now. So it's really important to just, find that voice and connect that to your own uniqueness, kind of like know who you are, try to use that in an adaptable way, because we all have different we all have different roles we step into, like conscious in how we use that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
For me, at least, that's something that took a lot of time for me to be conscious about. In the beginning, I was maybe kind of doing it a little bit, but it's kind of lately, the last few years, that I'm really conscious about how I can use my background and how I can then dive deeper into that and pull things up from my memory or whatever in a conscious way.
Yeah.
And the fourth thing is about the initial communication, because that's quite important. I think there are many people contacting me, and I think everyone that is doing one-on-ones, like maybe in the beginning, you're not going to have many people contacting you. You have to do an effort and go out, of course. And if you're in a local community, maybe going out talking to, let's say, your hairdresser, or it can be like many ways of getting the word out there, or through social media, or many ways of friends, and start somewhere. But once people contact you or start to find you, it can be through Instagram, Facebook, it can be through your website, it can be through word of mouth. It's really important, the impression that you give in the beginning, I think. So I'm very professional. I also am very human. I'm trying to combine that in my first contact. And to save time for me, I do have ready-made things I send out, but it's adapted always to every single situation. And so I have, my price lists and my general questions that I would ask in sort of like notes on my phone to save time, because maybe someone is writing me an email and I'm on the go somewhere. And there is no shame in that. You can still be very personal and very direct and make them feel seen, even if you're saving some time for yourself instead of rewriting everything every time. And then I'm just making sure to really read their email or their reach out really well. So if they're asking you some questions, make sure to answer those questions in a good way.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
then, yeah, because it's so often that it's just you're so caring a lot about what you want to say, you kind of forget that part. And that's really important. And also, I have questions that I would ask depending on, of course, the case. So that I will always write from scratch. But you know, things that makes them feel seen and make them also understand that I am thorough and that I am very clear on my role and what I cannot help them with and what I can help them with and these kind of things. And I will also send them my intake assessment. So either in the first email or very soon so that they have that as well and can look through so that they get a kind of idea of what I will look into as a general assessment at the beginning to figure out what our main priority will be in the sessions. And that also includes my price list, includes contracts and disclaimer and all of these things. So I have everything set for myself legally and also some security in terms of cancellation policy and some things that I think is just really important as a business owner. But I also think that this gives the impression that you're providing a serious service that they then would like to choose and invest their time and money in, but it also means that they would actually want to invest in how they do it and how they follow up and then also see results faster and better. So I think it's a holistic package. It just gives a good impression and it actually gives better results. That's my personal opinion. And also with my coaching clients for business, I'm also sending that out so they can take that as point of departure because I used a long time to create that and find the right questions and all of these things. And it's just really nice to have something to start out with. When you're a newbie teacher, you're like, what should I ask them? You know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Everything's so uncomfortable and uncertain.
Yeah. But even if you are an experienced teacher, working one-on-one is very different than working with group classes or corporates or workshops or whatever. It's just a very different setting. So it's just take some time to get into. So I would just make sure that I come across as very gentle, kind, and very professional and never pushy. Like I would never say things like, oh, I hope you will like that. I hope you will sign up. You know, I would just make them feel very free to choose then to work with me. I would never, be strategic in the sense that I would say like, oh, but I'm almost fully booked, so you should, book soon or anything like that either. I'm just like really neutral and they feel comfortable in that and they feel that then they are in charge. And that's, I think, really important. I just give them all of the reasons. I make sure to explain to them why it would be, what I think it would be very beneficial for them to work with me and what I would usually recommend of packages, for example, and leave it up to them. And I think people can smell a long way if you really feel like you have, like they have to, you have to sell to them to make your own business go around, right? Like you have to have this detachment a little bit too. I think it's a really good thing as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then number 5 is to transform your clients into long-term clients. Because if you're using all of this time and invest so much time in the initial assessment, etc., and then you have just one-offs, it's going to be a lot of time for little income. So it's just really important. But also because if you really want to help your clients, usually it needs more than one session. If you want to really dig into an issue or a challenge, you just have to have more sessions simply. So explaining that to them in a nice way, not selling way, but also giving packages that gives them a discount on packages. So I have single sessions are obviously more expensive than packages. And then I would have packages of 2 classes or 3 or 5 or 8. And I'm choosing to also give the option of 2 or 3 packages. I know some are just going straight from 1 to 5 or more. But my experience is that by giving that wide variety, I managed to catch more students because some can maybe just afford 2, but they would like to have more than 1, for example. Or some would like to have 2 to just see how it's going. And then they fall in love and they choose to have a package of 8 or maybe be followed for a year or 2 after that. Like starting out with some things and then having a discount after that. And what I do after 8 sessions is that if I follow them for 8 sessions, they will be able to get continuous sessions with me for the same price of that 8 session singular price. So they will have that discount. And that will also give them the freedom of like, okay, I'm going to book 1 or 2 more sessions and I don't have to commit to another 8. And I'm giving them that freedom, and they feel, but often they will still commit to 8 because of their own mental, like, okay, I'm going to show up. But I give them that opportunity, and then they feel they have that little extra luxury for being my kind of longer term student. And many I end up following much, much longer. And some I end up just following. Sure, maybe we manage to resolve a challenge in shorter time. Maybe it's easier things. Sometimes SI joint things can be faster, for example, or it really depends. But in that way, they are in charge, and also, of course, their economy will influence this. And I also must say that in the beginning, I felt so bad every time someone told me that, okay, I cannot afford this. I was immediately like, oh my God, I have to offer them something cheaper. And then I was thinking, okay, Amanda says it's a great idea to try to think, more long-term and strategic, and actually value your services. And that's really important. And I do offer more cheaper options for other things. Like I have my on-demand library. I have my pain management course that is a group course that is slightly lower, this kind of thing. So I do have offerings, and also charity events, for example. But my one-on-one sessions, these are the prices. This is fair. This is equal for everyone. And it's just much better that way, I think. It's very transparent and builds trust as well, I think. And then number 6 is to have a really good system for your knowledge and your trainings and what you know, because we all know that we don't remember everything we learned. Even if we go out and use it immediately, sometimes it's difficult to remember everything, especially in the beginning. And eventually, you will remember most things. But some things for me is still so specific. So let's say someone comes to me and say, okay, I have an injury of my T3 in the spine. Okay, I have to just remember which nerve was it that was going through there. What can I expect? Like, it's very specific. So it's good for me to be able to look this up really quickly and be able to prepare the classes in an efficient way. So I have a good system of my documents, and I have made, summaries for myself so that I'm able to, now I remember, to put things together. Some students and cases are easier, but some are more complex. So depends on how you work, obviously. But if you're going to work so specialized, I think it's really useful.
Yeah.
And then number 7, to be extremely clear on what your role is and what it's not. Like, you're not a healthcare professional unless you actually are. And you're not a therapist. I'm not their medical doctor. I'm not their psychologist. Especially, for example, with PTSD, you're never talking about their trauma. Like, you're never going into any psychological part. That's not your role. Like, it's so important to keep that very clear, because then they also feel safer, and you are more professional, and you're not supposed to try to do a job that is not yours. And it's especially important when you're working with specific challenges. And I would also add that I would never question what their healthcare provider is saying. I would always be very respectful, even if I can think within myself that, okay, maybe, what I see is very different. What I can observe with my orthopedic tests is very different than what they come to me to tell me. But if they're a physiotherapist that says something, I would say, okay, keep following that, but maybe we can try this, or maybe we can, I'm very respectful. And I think that's also coming across as positive as well. And remembering that we as yoga teachers, sometimes we get a lot more time with our students than these healthcare providers have. So we sometimes get to hear a lot of additional things and bigger picture things. So maybe we're able to help them in a different way. And that's really beautiful. And maybe we're able to help them. I have students that have tried everything, got to all kinds of teachers, and they don't have the help. But when they come to me, things are resolved, and it's often also because we have that time to really look across things and see how things might be conducted across the body, and not just a single thing that sometimes doctors will look at in that way. So I think that's also the beauty of yoga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I'm using a lot of my myofascial release background as well in this. I'm using it with almost all of my clients because it's a great way to work into tissues in a very specific way in addition to yoga poses. So that's another thing that is great to dive into if someone is curious, because it's something that is very easy for the students and clients to do at home as well. So it's a low cost thing for them to follow up that can give them very immediate relief. And that often makes them feel like, oh, wow, this session was really helpful in there and then. And it gives them the motivation to continue as well. So that's another thing that is a great thing. And I'm planning some continued education courses in that as well that is coming soon, but I haven't got around to finish it just yet. But it's a very exciting topic.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned for that.
Yeah, definitely. And number 8 is to build a network of other specialists, because again, your role is a yoga teacher and not a physiotherapist, not a doctor, not this, not that. But to have connections and contacts with, for example, a physiotherapist that you respect, that you know do a great job, or with my pre and postnatal students, for example, I have a pelvic floor physiotherapist that I know do a great job. If I'm working with someone with their pelvic floor rehabilitation, I will maybe work together with that physiotherapist. They can do internal assessments that I will never do, of course, because that's not my job. That's not my role. I will always recommend and refer them. And I think that's also makes you come across professional. And it also has the benefit of connections, because sometimes they will refer clients to me and I can refer clients to them. But in general, the major bonus is the fact that you can give them that feeling of safety and that you are able to, refer things away and say like, okay, maybe you should go. And of course they can go to their own. It's not like I'm collaborating or gaining anything from it, but, to have a word, because often they will ask you, and to have someone that you can, share their contacts with, sometimes that's a great bonus. Number 9 is to be selective with your clients. And this is something that may sound strange, because in the beginning, maybe you would want to just say yes to everyone. And I think it's really important to evaluate, are you able to help them? Will your competence be able to add something positive, or would someone else actually be better? So just being honest with yourself with that, but also to evaluate if someone is coming to you and you have a little off feeling, or they are being disrespectful in the way they're communicating. Or for example, last year I had someone that just kept insisting on trying to discuss my prices and trying to get a discount, like every single email. And I was like, okay,
so annoying.
Now I'm fully booked. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. I just knew that we would not be a good match, and I would probably be able to help this person, but I'm wasting a lot of time and energy, and I would better serve someone else. I would be a better match with someone else. So it's perfectly fine. And you do have limited time and limited energy. So if you're saying yes to this person, you can have a feeling up front that this is maybe going to be a person that will argue on everything that you suggest. And, it's going to be really hard to follow up with them. So saving that energy there will maybe liberate some energy into focusing on something else that will be more beneficial for you. So I'm really evaluating that. I'm not saying no to many, because usually people that contact me, they already know that I have the competence to help them. But still, sometimes I will evaluate it. And I think that's something to take with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my last one, I think, is just a little bit related to that, is that, take care of yourself as a teacher, recharge yourself, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to do a good job. And you've talked a lot about this in so many episodes. And I think that, like we talked about before the recording started as well, that so many of us teachers are so used to push ourselves really hard. Maybe like I know I have recovering good girl syndrome, perfectionist. We're grown up in this performer society, right? So it's just self-care is so easy that it comes last. But if you are drained, you're not going to be able to do a great job. And your future clients and your referrals, the fact that they will go out and talk to you about, if you're a great job with everyone else and you're going to get new clients, it's not going to happen if you're not doing that good job. So it's really important, but also, of course, for you, because it's your life. It's what you do. So I managed to recharge also from that, branching out in my niching to do different things to get variety. but also making sure that I have time to be in nature, to do other things that has nothing to do with yoga, so that I'm able to really just restore my energy storages, and also make sure that I have time for my meditation practice, my mindfulness practice, and these kind of things. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Those are amazing tips. Thank you so much for preparing all of that for, myself and listeners. That's just like so much good information. So I'm just very, very grateful for all of that.
I'm happy to hear it. And like a bonus tip, I think would also maybe to evaluate getting a business coach, like either me or you, for example, like someone that is able to help you jump over some of these steps, because it's taken me like 7 years to really get a really great strategy that is working really well, that is, clients are coming to me, everything is much more smooth. I've had so much learning on the way, and it takes so much time, all of this research on how to do things, etc. So if you can just skip some of those steps, you can use your time in an even more efficient way. And I think it's like some of the most well spent investments that you will have. And if you cannot afford a lot, maybe one session will even make a huge difference. Like having a different pair of eyes looking at, okay, this is what I want to do. Does it sound like a great idea? Or, I have this in this goal. Like, can you help me get there? It's just, I think, really, really useful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I know you've shared so much good stuff, but do you have any other like business lessons or anything that you want to add before we wrap up today?
Oh, yeah. So many business lessons. So, of course,
You've already mentioned so many good ones. So maybe even if you just have like one or two you want to leave listeners with.
yeah, I'm really happy to hear it. So I have a few, but like keep educating yourself, I already mentioned, and being curious and learning, and you know finding your voice, like really reflecting on, just to summing up some of the things I mentioned, like reflecting your own story, because that's really your strength, like your story, your experiences, and your strengths. And I would add like some simple things, like for example, the website that I mentioned is much more important than I thought. And I also had a huge rebranding in 2020. So I also changed the way that I was working with my one-on-one clients around that time. And I completely changed my website, and I completely changed also the way that I was communicating, or maybe not completely, but I pivoted quite a lot. And I was really scared that I would lose a lot of my clients, my community. I was reflecting a lot on this, and I managed to do it in a really good way, because what happened is that I had some injuries. I had the typical impingement injury in my shoulder because there's too much chaturangas and online teaching, which I'm sure many yoga teachers can relate to. That's also why I specialize in yoga teacher injuries. And actually, a lot of teachers come to me because they, it's a heavy thing. To be teaching a lot is heavy. So if
Yeah, it's a
you
lot.
would exactly, and if you would like to have a break also for your body, doing one-on-ones can be great for that as well, because I'm just demonstrating maybe once or twice, and I'm sitting in front of the screen looking at them if I'm doing online. I'm also doing in person, but not as much. I'm trying to get most of it online because it's the most benefit for me and my schedule as well. And I have a really good system to give them a great follow-up online. So in that way, I'm first of all having full attention on them, but I'm also saving my own body. So it's a great way to find that balance. And I had discovered that I had a hip arthrosis in 2020. So I had this acute stage where a lot of the positions I was not able to do without discomfort. And I had to really find a different way of teaching. And now I'm back to being able to do strong vinyasa classes. But at the time, I was not. And that's also why I started to dive really deep into a lot of the anatomy of the hip and how I could redefine my sequencing to be much more functional and thinking about benefits. So now I'm kind of also obsessed with this, that it's in terms of our modern lifestyle, some of the things we're doing in yoga is not necessarily the best that we can do. We're sitting a lot, for example. Our hamstrings are already really relaxed and long and maybe weak. And what we often do in yoga is go and stretch them. Is that the most beneficial we can do? Maybe not. Sometimes, to strengthen them, work with them in different ways can sometimes be more beneficial. So just like thinking a little bit more creatively and sequencing in a way that is really beneficial for my students so they can really feel like, wow, okay, this was really what I needed and it's really great. I think that's really, really wonderful. So a lesson is that don't be afraid of like changing. And now I don't have any fancy pictures on my website anymore. No fancy yoga positions, just like down to earth things. And what happens is that actually I have more attraction now. I have more clients, more people contacting me. And I don't know if it's also combined with the fact that I'm gradually just growing and becoming more renowned as a teacher, but still it was definitely not harming my communication. I just made sure to, yeah, exactly. And I was just making sure to make my transition in a way that my community that was already following me would understand that I'm evolving as a person. I'm learning these amazing things that they would be interested in learning as well, to evolve with me. So it became kind of something that they would want to have as well. So evolving together with me. And I think that's beautiful. And so yeah, if you have to transition or find new ways, and everything is possible, just have to be a little creative about it. So I think that's, yeah, maybe my biggest one.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm curious, where can listeners go to find you, Maria, if they want to check out your website, see how you've structured your business, if they want to work with you, perhaps, all that good stuff?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So my website is www, and then it's my name, and I have a Norwegian name, so it's a little bit weird, but it's just my name, Maria, and then waag.com. So that's Maria, waag.com. And that's my website. So that's where you find my offerings, and you can sign up to my newsletter if you want to have information, for example, about the retreat or upcoming trainings or these kinds of things. And you can also find me on the Yoga Alliance teacher profiles, of course, with my Yoga Alliance continued education provider courses. I have just one up now that is online that you can do fully online, but there are coming more. There's one that is already ready that I will upload these days. Maybe it's already live when listeners are listening to this, about mindful restorative yoga. I dived a lot into restorative yoga because I really needed it myself. And I mean, combining it, it's like often I think the story of teachers, like, I'm loving this so much, I'm going to dive into that. And I think that's great. And I'm combining mindfulness into that as well. So using my mindfulness background. And I think I forgot to say that, but as a mindfulness teacher, I've been studying with the University of Massachusetts Medical School and the team of Jon Kabat-Zinn. So I'm really like into the core of mindfulness. And I'm trying to bring that into my yoga classes as well. And my students really enjoy that because mindfulness just really changed my life so much. So I just find it so great to include some of that wisdom onto the mat as well. And also on Facebook and Instagram, I have the same name. So the same strange name, Maria Waag. So W-A-A-G in one word, Maria Waag, and then yoga.
I was like, you're going to have to tell me how to say your last name because I got to say it in the intro and I don't want to butcher it.
So in Norwegian, I would say Våg. Okay. But it's like not, you cannot guess that from the pronunciation. In Italy, they're always calling me like Wag.
Yeah, that's probably what I was going to say, Maria Waag.
Yeah, exactly. And I even had people coming to deliver packages that think that I'm Chinese because of the word and the pronunciation. Like Wag sounds very Chinese. Interesting. But anyway, there's an old Norwegian name. So it's on Instagram and Facebook, you find me as Maria, W-A-A-G, yoga. Okay. And yeah, that's it. So it's I'd love to connect with you also on LinkedIn if you want to find me there. It's my name, normal name, Maria Waag, on LinkedIn as well. If you want to find me there as well. I'd love to connect.
Awesome. And you mentioned that the top 10 tips are going to be available for listeners as well as kind of a freebie.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for reminding me about that. I have definitely a lot of, I have that as a freebie, but I also have some other discounts for the Ambiome listeners because I really would like to give the community something extra. So you find all of that on my website. So mariawaag.com and then /Ambiome simply. And you find both to download this PDF And you have also discount to my continued education courses for Yoga Alliance and some other good stuff. So I'm really excited to share that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all of this. This has been really great. This has just been like value packed. So I feel like it was definitely worth the wait to have you on the show. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much to you, Amanda. It's been really, really nice to talk to you. And thank you. It's been an honor. I've been following you for so long, and it's really an honor to be here on the show. And I hope it was valuable for some of the listeners. Happy to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. All right, friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Maria. She shared so much good stuff. And I wanted to take a moment to just go over those top 10 tips really quickly for anyone who just needs it super, super condensed. And like she mentioned, you can head on over to mariawag.com/MBOM and get everything downloaded into a little PDF. But in the meantime, I wanted to just go through them super quickly. So the first one was select one or several topics that would be unique to you and useful for a one-on-one setting that you'd like to specialize in, and or do additional trainings or courses for specializations that you're interested in. Number 2 is take your clients seriously, make them feel seen, ask questions, and be empathetic. Build trust and make sure you deliver quality sessions and follow up every time. Number 3 is find your voice, your strengths, and your uniqueness so you stand out and the clients want to choose exactly you to follow them. Number 4 is initial communication with the client when they first contact you is key to get them on board. Number 5 is transforming potential clients into longer-term clients through helping them understand the need of more than one session without being pushy and through offering packages. Love that. Number 6 is have a good system for your knowledge and training info so it's easy to look back at in an efficient way. Number 7 is be extremely clear on what your role is and what it is not. Number 8 is build a network of other specialists for referrals and that type of thing. Number 9 is be selective with your clients. And number 10 is recharge yourself. So lots of goodness there. Make sure you go check out Maria. Make sure you go check out the resources she's put together for you guys. And of course, a big thank you to Offering Tree for supporting this episode of the podcast. Make sure you go give them some love, offeringtree.com/MBOM. And thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.